Thank you for sharing the myths and facts with us. This workshop is all about trying to quantify or measure the intangibles in higher education. And let me start by going through the objectives of this workshop, 3 objectives, and then from there we move into what we mean by intangible and why do we need to measure them. So after completion of the workshop, the participant will be able to demonstrate an understanding of global methods for measuring and quantifying the outcome of educational process. So we are looking at a way of evaluating the educational process as a whole, and because it's an intangible thing, you cannot touch it. Education, mainly, you cannot touch it. That's why we are looking for a variety of, or an arsenal of tools that will allow us to probe and measure or quantify the education correctly. The second outcome is distinguish the difference between assessment, evaluation, and measurement, and then employ different types of approaches to evaluation to improve learning. We will look into different types of learning assessment techniques, and from these learning assessment techniques we can apply them. We will move from traditional classrooms into new setups that utilizes technology as well as different learning techniques to enhance learning. So we'll look at these techniques in one of the activities and try to employ these techniques in our classrooms. So Simon Sink, are you familiar with this name? Simon Sink. He's a guy behind the conferences that started in the 80s of the last century in the United States, and then it boomed up, and now it is a global thing. The conference is called Technological Entertainment and Design Conference, and it is short for TED. Technological Entertainment and Design Conference. And because it became so famous, people started registering with high numbers. Now it is roaming all the globe, and they give it a name TEDx. And if you go into the YouTube and just write TED or TEDx, you'll find different speeches. There is a famous 20 minutes speech about higher education, which I like. So just write TED higher education and listen to the guy criticize and examines the myths and facts about higher education. But this guy, Simon Sink, he was the person responsible for the successness of these conferences, TED conferences. He written a book saying start with a why. In this book, he claims the following. In his book, Start with a Why, he says, greatest influencers, and by the way, this TED calls for people with high influence to talk to the audience and tell them about anything related to technology, entertainment, or design. So great influencers realize that people won't truly buy into a product, service, movement, or idea until they understand the why behind it. So nobody will buy into your idea, what you are trying to sell, unless they know why. Why do I need to understand this? So the question, the fundamental question that we will start this workshop with is why? Why we need to measure or quantify the intangibles in higher education or higher education institute. First of all, let us identify the intangible. What do you mean by intangibles? Just shout it out. Learning outcomes. Sorry? That cannot be touched or measured. Skills, competencies, soft skills. This is at student level. What about institutional level? What you said is correct, but this is at student level. What do we mean by intangible at institutional level?
Responsibility and self-confidence.
Values. Still, we are talking about individual. What about institution? What could be considered as an intangible for institution? Reputation. Yeah, reputation, for example. Reputation is something you cannot measure, you cannot quantify. Yes, you can measure something that will indicate the reputation. For example, in educational institute, we measure the faculty to student ratio. The higher the faculty to student ratio, it means that you have more faculty to teach the students, and the classrooms will be limited with a small number of staff, which indicate that you have a, let's say, some sort of good quality educational system. Not necessarily, but it may lead into a good quality system. So this number, this tangible number, which is student to faculty ratio, can be used to try and quantify the tangible, but it's not enough. Because you may go into some higher education institute with a good student to faculty ratio, yet the quality of education is not good. You have another intangible aspect, which is student engagement. We used to talk about student satisfaction, but no longer. Now we are talking about student engagement, which is a more broad term. Student engagement is an intangible. You cannot measure it. So reputation, student engagement, relationship, student faculty to faculty relationship, student to student relationship, which are expressed by the term culture, organizational culture. So organizational culture, reputation, all these things are intangible. The problem with intangibles is the difficulty in measuring them. You cannot measure them. You can use tangibles to quantify intangibles, but still they are not enough. And because of that, people are trying to ask why. Why do we need to measure intangibles? They are very difficult to measure. We can use tangibles to try and quantify, but then each institution, educational facility will have its own tangible metrics that they are trying to quantify intangibles, and yet they sometimes succeed, they sometimes not. You try to focus on some measurements, and then suddenly your ranking is not as you expected. So why do we need to measure tangibles? Let me tell you something. Let me share a quote with two of the people who have worked or who have came up with an idea that became one of the best 100 ideas of mankind, according to New York Times. These two guys, Dr. Robert Kaplan and Dr. David Norton, they came up with a method called the Balanced Scorecard in the 1992. This balanced scorecard was used to formulate strategy for organizations. One of them are higher education institutions. Many of the higher education institutions now are following the balanced scorecard strategy formulation. But this is not our concern. Our concern is when they introduced the method, the reason why they came with this method is because of what they are saying here. They say an organization's intangible assets may easily represent more than 75% of its value. When a parent or parents advise their son or daughter to join a university, they don't ask about student to faculty ratio, do they? Only we academics care about this. They ask about what? They ask about reputation. How good is this university? Is it giving good education? And they have their own metrics of weighing the reputation, which is an intangible thing, but yet still it forms 75% of the value. So the real value lies in the intangible, not in the tangibles. That's why, but because the tangibles are easy to be measured, we always go and measure the tangibles and forget about the intangibles. Although they continue and say, strategy formulation, if you want to design a strategy for your higher education institute to make that higher education institute excel and be one of the elite, you need to address mobilization and alignment of your intangible assets. You have to take care of your intangible assets, your reputation, your culture, your relationship, faculty to faculty relationship, students to faculty relationship. All these things must be taken into consideration whenever you are trying to plan for your higher education institute. The problem is how do you measure them? So what I'm trying to present in this workshop is a methodology, is a formulation, is a suggestion on how to approach this problem, but not from the perspective of top management, university top management. It all starts within you, within academics. The pyramid, without a good base, will collapse. So it all starts within the classroom we are engaging in. We start quantifying the intangibles, the 75% of our value of our institution from the classroom. And that's what we want to try to do in this workshop. So we will go through some of the slides that introduce this concept to you, the concept of assessment within the classroom, and then move past the classroom and go step by step in the pyramid until we build up the framework for evaluating the intangibles in higher education starting from the classroom. We need to try and find ways and be innovative and creative in thinking about the problem of quantifying and measuring the intangibles, more specifically in higher education, since some organizations, for example, if it's a private organization, then how much money they got would, let's say, answer the question of how much value they carry. In a governmental organization, how much services they provide will also answer that. But in education, we deal with minds and hearts. So it is very challenging and tough to quantify the knowledge, the skills that has been acquired by the students. To do a good mapping of intangibles in higher education, the best way to do it is to measure the or to assess the intangibles according to a variety of levels, not just one level. So the best way to do it is to measure or assess the intangibles in higher education according to 5 levels, 5 common levels. We will look at these levels being the most common, and they are integrated part of any educational process. The first level is assessing individual students' learning within courses. So you track back the students through the courses. We want to develop methods, techniques that helps us assess the student across courses. That is level 1. Then level 2 is assessing individual student learning across courses. So it's not just within the course, within one course, it is within courses that he will be following. So level 1 is within the course, just single course, and you follow the student progress throughout the semester. Level 2, you follow the progress of students through semesters and years, through courses. Level 3 is assessing the courses themselves. So level 1 and 2 is concerned with the student, how well he's doing in the course from day 1 until the final exam, and then how well he's doing from the day he admitted until the day he graduated. That is level 1 and level 2. Then in level 3, we compare courses, more specifically and especially courses that are taught by many instructors, single course that are taught by many instructors. So we look at these courses and we try to assess the effectiveness of these courses. That is level 3. And you can see that all these levels are concerned with academics. The main role and responsibility lies on the shoulders of academics to try and do the probing in these levels. Then we move into level 4. In level 4, we assess programs. The difference between level 3 and level 4, level 3 is the assessment of similar courses that are taught by different academics. In level 4, we go from the first course that the students engage in, whenever he select a discipline, into the last course, and we measure the effectiveness, we assess the effectiveness through these courses, through the program, and how good is this program in delivering or achieving the intended program outcome, the intended program outcome. And then level 5 is assessing the whole institution. By assessing individual programs, you integrate all the individual programs in assessing the whole institution. From level 1 to level 3, the responsibility lies in academics. Maybe level 4, the responsibility lies within quality assurance offices or quality assurance departments within deanships and colleges. And then, sorry about that. And then level 5, it lies in the hand of the leadership of the institution or the college or the university. But from 1 to 3, these are the main domain that we want to focus on in this workshop. We cannot cover the whole wide spectrum of assessment on the 3 levels. We might require 3 or 4 workshops to cover all the assessment method, because as you go up, as you go down with the assessment, the problem becomes much more complicated, and there are many aspects that you should look at. So for this workshop, if we manage to cover these 3 levels, then it's okay, and I think that's enough for us, because that's what we want to cover in our classrooms. But before going into much more details about each and every level, we will have one activity to identify what each level all about. Before going into that, we need to define assessment itself. What do we mean by assessment, and how assessment is different from measurement? So when we say assessment, we mean assessment can answer important questions about learning of individual students, effectiveness of single course or program, or even institution. So when we say assessment, we not just mean student-wise, course-wise, program-wise, institutional-wise. And precision in formulating the question of interest helps to pinpoint the level of analysis, determine the appropriate methods, and guide data sampling, aggregation, interpretation, and use. The assessment questions forms the basic constituent of the assessment process. If you craft the assessment question in proficiency, the rest of the process will be smooth. If you have problems crafting these questions, then you will have problems gathering and interpreting the data. And we will come to crafting these questions in a minute. But let's just proceed with assessment.
One point here, we are doing the assessment for intangibles, right?
Yes.
Because what I see actually, some tangibles are existing within the definition of the assessment.
Yeah.
So this is just a general definition.
The way of measuring the intangibles is through measuring tangibles. But the problem is, one tangible is not enough to measure an intangible. So you will measure a variety of tangibles and then combine them all to give you an idea of the intangible. Did you get my idea?
I understand that you are trying to use indirect assessment.
Yes. This is the only way. We cannot measure intangibles. You cannot quantify reputation, for example. You cannot quantify students' learning. Yes, you know whether you can have an idea whether the student learned or not. So what do? You, for example, use grades as a way of indication whether the students learn or not. But grade on their own, we'll come to grades and assessment and the difference between them. But grade on their own is not enough to indicate that the students have or learning have happened or not.
Because what I understand from you in the first session,
Yeah.
that if you try to measure the value, you should have some kind of independent entity that do some evaluation. For example, I can tell you, for example, MIT
Yes.
in America. You tell me it is a good school, it graduates good engineers, right?
Yes.
How this is measured? This is measured by the market. It is measured by the sectors that the people see. it is measured by the innovation that comes from outside.
It is measured by how many graduate has been hired, how many graduates are working in the leadership posts of the. So all these are tangibles. How many, how much, and what's the proportion, and all these are tangibles. But you use them to measure the intangibles, which is reputation. And that's what we are trying here. We are trying to, let's say, have an arsenal of tangible measurements, which when integrated, will give me an indication about intangible. In fact, the process of measuring intangible is a cumulative process. And it has to be reviewed over and over again because things are changing. And whenever things are changing, your measurement methods are not as effective as they are. You have to change your measurement methods because the environment are all changing.
Yes, so we agree. But my point of view is that when you go back to the slide before that,
Yeah.
from this, if we, for example, study together, level 1, level 2, level 3, we are focusing on within the course.
Yes.
This doesn't give me really the full picture of
No, it's not.
measuring the intangibles
It's-
that we are here for.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
But you need to integrate all of this. If you don't have the basic, if you don't assess correctly at these levels will not be achieved. You have to have the whole 5 levels. The process is a institutional wise process. It's not just concerned with academics. But if the work at these levels are not done correctly, level 1, level 2, level 3, the data that accumulates is of no use. It's not representative data. And it will cause into failure in trying to evaluate the tangible. What I'm trying to say is we have to do a good job in level 1, level 2, level 3 in order to proceed and go for level 4 and level 5. Nowadays, people, even elite universities, are having problems here. And they are trying different methods. They are trying different frameworks to try and evaluate the programs, to try and assess the situation. The ranking, for example, the ranking is one way of trying and evaluating the institution. But in my personal opinion, ranking is not a very efficient way because it tends to ignore very important aspects like the learning process, how much they just focus on the quality of the students, they focus into the amount of research, but there are many other aspects that tend to be ignored. And this is causing a problem for universities. Why? Because it is diverting their attention into less important aspects, and people are now competing and universities are competing and trying to enter into the ranking. And in doing that, they are ignoring very important educational aspect, which is something wrong, and we shouldn't do. So what I'm trying to convey here, what I'm trying to do, we have to start somewhere. And the starting point is in these levels, and it lies under our shoulder as academics. Then if the process is rectified and integrated across, the things will become better. Just a minute, so that people will hear. Yes.
Are just like the foundation of the building, which is hidden
Yes.
in the ground.
Yes.
And what we see up is
The tip of the iceberg. Yes.
reputation of the program and reputation of the institution.
Yes.
That cannot be achieved without
Without 1, 2, 3, which lies in where? In our hand. That's what I tried to convey to you.
Because these are, we can do by assessment, we can do by assessment to 1, 2, 3, and we get very good results from it.
Yes.
This does not
And then this should go into level 4 and level 5. So what you are saying is correct. Yes, sometimes we do a good job at level 1, 2, and 3, but the framework of the whole institution is not integrated. The assessment is not directed. The data is not gathered. The examination of data, the decision are not based on the data that we gather in the classroom. And that's also another problem that should be rectified. But this lies into the top level management of the institution. You have to, let's say, cascade the whole process and link it together. Okay, so when we want to define assessment, now before I go on defining assessment, let me ask you this question. Which is inclusive to the other, measurement or assessment? Which is the umbrella and which goes under, measurement or assessment? Measurement or assessment? Assessment, measurement. Well, let me tell you this. I traced the differences. I've read several papers that talk about measurement differences between measurement and assessment, and I see that there are three opinions about them. One opinion is that assessment is more inclusive and more comprehensive than measurement, and measurement is an integrated part of assessment. So you assess, and in the assessment you measure. Okay? For example, you measure the student's knowledge, you measure the skills, you measure the participation, you measure the engagement, and all these measurements will form assessment. This is one way. Another way is giving the other different part of the spectrum. They are saying no, measurement is more inclusive and assessment is just part of the measurement. And then there is a third opinion that says measurement and assessment are just two similar things. You can use them interchangeably. The opinion I like, and you are most welcome and most free to disagree with me, is the first opinion. We assess, and then in the assessment we measure. We measure several things. So assessment is more inclusive. That is my opinion, but if you don't like it, or if you feel that it's not true, be my guest. I don't mind, because there are certain papers that says that measurement is more inclusive than assessment. So to define the assessment, at its most fundamental level, assessment is the action of appraising the quality of something or someone. We assess courses, something. We assess students, someone. Okay? Within the context of education, the term assessment is used to describe the appraisal of the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and to remember those three words, which is related to Bloom taxonomy. I always use the acronym KSA. So we'd like to measure knowledge, how much knowledge has been gained. We'd like to measure skills, have skills been acquired by the students, and most important, yet less focused on, attitudes and beliefs. And that's when we have the induction icebreaker in the morning. Some of you have said that's the major problem that lies within the students. It's their attitudes toward education and their beliefs. They believe the grade is more important than the knowledge or skill. They believe that to get a job, you need a certificate with a high GPA, and skills and knowledge is not important. These are beliefs and attitudes. It's not common. Not every student have them, but the majority are having them. And that's our problem. Yes?
Just in addition to what you said,
Yeah.
they have made this into sort of a term, ask.
Yes. Ask.
Attitude, skill, knowledge.
Yes.
Important thing, first for the attitude, then the skill, and then finally the knowledge.
And then the knowledge. Yes. So you should work on attitudes and then work on the skill and knowledge, because skill and knowledge without attitude is nothing. Is nothing. So that's what we try to assess. Skills, knowledge, and attitudes. Skill, knowledge, and attitudes. And assessment is a process that involves goal setting, evidence gathering, and this may occur at several levels: system, institution, college, departments, or programs. So we set a goal. We have course intended learning outcome, or silos. Program intended learning outcomes, or PILOs. A university or program or institution learning outcomes. So you have a level of learning outcomes. Upon integration, those learning outcomes must fulfill the mission of education or the mission of the institution within the community it is or the domain it is working in.